Well, hello everybody. This channel is not really a personal channel. This isn't a channel that I use to just talk about everything in my personal life, what I've done, what I haven't done, anything like that. It comes up. So those of you who pay really close attention sometimes can infer a great deal of information about my life, my work, my school, that sort of thing. But I've never thought of this as a channel to just talk about me and my problems and because that's not that interesting. And sometimes there's relevance. Sometimes you've done stuff in your past that illustrates a point very well, and it's worth talking about. And that's when I bring it up, and that's what I want to do with this video. So most of you don't know this, but I have been, over the course of my life, accused of many, many crimes. Some of them violent, some of them unviolent, but many crimes: rape, assault, battery, theft, burglary, imprisonment, kidnapping, many, many crimes. And I have a good reputation. And the fact that these rumors, these allegations that I've committed these crimes is out there has dispersed my reputation among some people anyway. Not among most people. Most people, they know what an upstanding guy I am. They understand that I'm a great guy, and if I have done anything wrong, it's only because I had to do it. It was necessary. And they don't necessarily listen to these wild allegations of me being a criminal or a mafia or anything like that. But those allegations have been made, and it's very, very disheartening for me to have to even talk about this. I'd rather focus on my good qualities and not have to, descend, have the argument descend into such, terrible lies about me. But it has been put out there, and I think that it's important to explain to everybody how I was able to refute these charges. Now, it's true I've actually done all of these things. I have had sex with people against their will. I have taken people's money against their will. I've done all kinds of things, or at least it would appear that way. But not really. Not really, because what may appear to be a crime on the surface wasn't a crime. When I have sex with somebody and they don't want me to, I mean, I've had people say, no, don't do it. Please stop, get away, resist, kick, thrash, scream, call out for help. I've had people do that. It wasn't rape in those cases because those people, despite all appearances, were consenting. They were consenting to what I was doing to them. It was voluntary. I wasn't coercing them, and they were just, it looked that way if you are a naive person, if you don't understand the philosophy behind it, you might think that it was a crime, but it wasn't. And this goes for all the times I've taken money. I take money all the time. And sometimes people don't even notice and whatever, but if people sometimes people try and stop me and I will just come and take it. And if they resist me, I'll punish them as I see fit. Of course, there's people who get through the cracks. There's lots of people who I'm unable to take money from or do anything to. I mean, I can't be everywhere and do everything. So there's plenty of people out there who I haven't committed crimes against, or that sort of thing. But uh, none none of these people though, none of these people are in a position to say that they hadn't consented. And the reason is because they were free to leave. They were free to leave. Like the people that I've raped, all of them had choices that they could have taken. They could have decided to leave wherever I was going to be before I got there. They could have decided to kill themselves. They could have decided to just give me what I wanted without resisting. It would be better, it would have been better. They had the option of just accepting it. If they hadn't been so selfish to resist, it wouldn't have been rape. They have, when I say they have freedom to leave, right? And what I mean by that is I would let them go if they applied for a passport from me, right? You don't have to be raped by me. You don't have to give me your money. You can ask me to not do so, and whatever penalty I feel like assessing to you for that, you can do. So you can bribe, I mean, you can offer me money instead. You can come to me and say, listen, I don't like you having sex with me, or I don't like you taking my money. I don't like the things that you do to me. I'd like to leave. I'd like to get away. Now, of course, all of your stuff, I pretty much can call that if I want. Now, I don't always do that. I might not take that much of your stuff, or I might take more of it. And it's kind of up to me whether I like it or not. I could say, I don't want to give you a passport, or I don't want to let you leave, or you can go, but you can't take 50% of your stuff, or 30% of your stuff, or 10% of your stuff, or all of your stuff, or whatever I decide. It's up to me. But whatever I decide, that's what, that's fair. And the people that I've done this to, they had a choice. You know, they had a choice. And since they chose to allow me to go ahead with what I wanted to do anyway, versus paying the penalties that I would have put on them had they not done what I said, then they're consenting, then it's voluntary. It's ridiculous to talk about it in terms of a coercive criminal act. They had choices. They could have done other things, right? They're free to go, and I have, other people like me out there. They could go and have those people rape them. And if they don't choose to get raped by somebody else, then they're choosing to have sex with me, and then it's not rape, it's consent. Anyone who can now, if and it doesn't matter if they flail about and say they don't want to do it, or how much they hate me, or how much they never agreed, or they never even pretended to love me, or maybe that they did love me and now they've changed their mind and they no longer want it. Irrelevant. They have choices. The fact that a victim has choices, the fact that there are hypothetically things they might have done to prevent what happened to them happening, means that they are, in a sense, actively, volitionally deciding to have what happens to them happen to them. And so, yeah, it kind of looks bad to a lot of people, but those people who think it looks bad just don't understand. They do not understand that deep down, somebody who hasn't successfully stopped me through, running away into the woods, becoming a hermit, sneaking out of my, out of the area I control, or killing me or whatever, uh, and maybe enslaving me, and instead, anyone who fails to do that, even if they try. I mean, there's been people who have tried. I remember not so long ago, lots and lots of people tried to do this, and it looked like for a little while, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be able to take their money, rape them, whatever. And there was a big fight. I won, and so, you know, they are still consenting. They are still. It's what I've done to them, both in the process of subduing them and since then, has all been voluntary. There's no crime there. Now, some people out there will say that a criminal isn't exonerated because his victim has choices that they could make. You're not absolved of your the morality of your actions because the people you do them to could do other things. I mean, you hear this a little bit. Every once in a while you'll hear maybe pro gun control people saying that victims should not be able to shoot their assailants, and we'll talk about maybe you could have run away, maybe you could have jumped out a window, maybe you could have called the police, maybe you could have just given them your money and crossed your fingers. But really, most people don't make that argument most of the time. And they don't look at criminals and say, well, they're not really criminals because their victims could have moved to Somalia or wherever, Iceland. That's usually not considered a valid defense. I mean, defense attorneys, I don't know, if you watch court TV, you'll never see the defense attorneys get up and say, listen, my client did all the things that are alleged, but the person that he did them to, they could have left the country. They could have fled. They could have now, and this is especially true if the alleged criminal like had control, had powerful uh, infrastructure set aside to prevent or restrict the choices of their victim. I mean, we talk about barriers to entry. Of course, there's barriers to exit too. But, you know, there are people who make that argument and they say, look, what you do, it's pretty analogous to what the criminals do, and it's quite a stretch to say that because somebody could hypothetically go someplace else or overthrow you or kill you or maybe escape and hide, either like legally hide through maybe a tax loophole or something, or physically hide, say, in the mountains or in the swamps or whatever, that you're not a criminal and that it's voluntary. But those people are missing a critical detail, because what I have that normal criminals don't have is a piece of paper that 220 years ago, a group of men who are actually not related to me or to my victims got together and they wrote stuff on this piece of paper and then they signed their names to it. And I know if we were in a normal court with a normal rapist and he said I was allowed to rape this person or take their money or tell them how to arrange their house or how to run their business or tell them where they can go and where they can't go or tell them what kind of drugs they can and cannot take. If a person was to say that they were allowed to do that because of a contract signed by different people 220 years ago, I don't think most courts would even begin to ask what are the terms of that agreement? What does the text of that document say? I think most courts would say that's stupid. How can people who have been dead now for most of them have been dead over 200 years, but at least 150 years, with maybe one or two exceptions, how could they sign a contract that is binding on other people hundreds of years in the future? I think every court in the country would probably say that. And the other thing that they're missing, that they don't understand about this particular contract and why it gives me the right to do these things, is because of democracy. Because this document, this is very important. This is very important. The people who signed this document also ran elections. Now, the majority of people had no say in these elections. Okay, Native Americans had no say. Blacks, are almost all blacks, had no say. Certainly no slaves had any say. And among the free blacks, most of them had no say either. Also, no women had any say. Women had no say at all. And even men, even white men, of course, younger men, children did not have any say. And even among white, adult men, it varied from place to place, but the franchise was limited to property owners and sometimes only to a small number of the richest property owners. However, among that small minority of the entire population in a select period of time, a slight majority or even a larger majority of those people who voted there elected people to be their representatives. And those representatives of that small minority of the people 225 years ago, they're the ones who signed this document. Bam, bam. And that document says that I can do all the things that I can do. Now, a lot of smart ass people have read this document and come up with these crazy ideas that it says you're only supposed to do a certain number of things and you can't do other things. It doesn't say anything about rape, for instance. It doesn't say anything about redistributing wealth or anything like that. Doesn't say that that I'm allowed to tap your phone or any of that stuff. These people are dumbasses because I'm the only one who's allowed to interpret this document. I get to rule over you. I get to do whatever I want. And if there's any dispute, I decide what this document means. I decide what obligations it gives me to you and you to me. I've basically decided that I don't owe you anything. I can give you things. I like to redistribute wealth. Who doesn't? But I'm not obligated. I could at any moment say I'm not going to do that anymore, and it would be legal because whatever I say I'm going to say is legal. And I think that should be pretty obvious to everybody. I think that that's pretty much self-evident that that's correct. And these gainsayers who like to go around saying, "Oh no, blah blah blah, social contract, you never sign anything." You don't need to sign things for there to be a contract. You don't need to actually give consent. If somebody says that they're your representative, they can take it upon themselves to bind you to a contract. That's like contract law 101, that somebody can do that. And just like if I were to sign a contract with somebody and say, "Hey, I will pay you a certain percentage of my money if you come and clean my house and mow my lawn and everything." And if they don't do those things, if they never come and clean my house, I still owe them the money, right? They still have I have to I am obligated to them forever at that point, even no matter what they do. I mean, even if they maybe paint a little bit of my house, or maybe if they mow my lawn but half as much, or maybe if they never do anything, I still owe them not only what's in the contract, but whatever they interpret the contract as saying. So they could just come and say, "We're taking half of everything. I know the contract says 10% or whatever, but we're just deciding that it means something different." And that's pretty solid. That's pretty much consent. You pretty much agreed to that. Pretty much. It's consent. And a lot of people like to point out, you know, they say that the money you pay to the people banding about this piece of paper, that's consensual. But I think that they're too limited, because the argument that as long as you don't run away or successfully rebel, as long as that argument is valid, then that doesn't just mean that taking money is consensual. It means that everything is consensual. If that's a valid argument, if you're going to say, "Look, you could have escaped, you could have gone to Somalia, you could have, gone to become a hermit, and because you didn't do that, the money that we're taking, it's not robbery, it's not theft, it's not coercion, it's just completely voluntary." Well, then this argument doesn't just apply to taking money. It applies to everything. Everything is consent. That's why I'm not a rapist, because they consented. Yes, I can take their money if I want. They're consenting to it. It's not a crime. They've consent. They no matter what they say, no matter how they talk, no matter what blah blah blah, they consented because they haven't fled. And of course, by flee, I mean I would have to give them permission to flee, right? They could ask. Not that many people are asking, because you should see the neighbors, but you know, they could, but since they don't, they're consenting. And of course, they're not consenting then to just taking money. If I want to go and blow their brains out, I can do that. If I want to choke them to death because they're doing something I don't like, if I want to shoot them because I'm suspicious that maybe they've done something that offends me, and I do this a couple hundred times a year. I mean, it's just, and where they actually die. I mean, we're not talking about all the other times when nobody necessarily dies. But none of this is murder, because all of this is consensual. I'm basically in the same category as Jack Kevorkian is vis-a-vis his patients. They're consenting to him. Now, in his case, they're making it very explicit. They're saying, I consent to this. I absolve this guy. I want him to do that. Now, the most of the people I do things to, they never say that. They never do that. There are things I like to interpret as explicit consent. I like to, if somebody comes, I arrest people all the time, and if and sometimes I'll say, well, I won't arrest you as much as if you sign this piece of paper or if you get this license or whatever. And I view that personally as them as just an explicit uh, assent to our relationship, our contract. Now, even if they don't do those things, even if they don't get a license or they say the license is whatever limited in its capacity, then the fact that they haven't fled is just implicit consent. Again, and this is across the board, universally used everywhere, right? If you are in an area, then that's implicit consent to whoever is in that area doing whatever they want, as long as they can say that they ran an election and some majority of some electorate at some point cast votes for them, even though we don't really know, what those people were imparting to you, what they were trying to get you to do, what their will for you to do. I mean, it goes without saying, a lot of times to get people to vote for you, you've got to say things, you got to promise things, and a lot of people will vote for you on the understanding that you're going to do those things, but it's irrelevant. You can just break those promises. You could say I'm going to end the wars, or I'm not going to raise taxes, or whatever else, and have every intention of doing that, keeping us out of the war, blah blah blah, little things like that. And they once they vote for you, though, it doesn't matter whether you said those things or not. You can just go back. It's just completely non-binding. It's completely non-binding. Well, to you, everything that you do subsequent to that, though, is completely binding on everyone else. You can unilaterally impose whatever stipulations, regulations that you wish, and the people who voted for you, and even the people who didn't vote for you, voted against you, all those people lumped together, boom, done. It's consent. And again, it's not just for money. There's no reason to just say this is only consenting for money. They live here, they're consenting. If I want to fuck you, I don't care how much you bitch and scream and flail and squirm and yell and scream and scratch. Doesn't matter, you consented. You could have left. You have options. You're free to choose options. Now, the ones that I'm going to let you go with, the ones there's only, I mean, there's stuff you can do that I won't know about, right? You can sneak through the cracks. Hypothetically, there's things you could do to escape. On top of that, though, that's difficult because there's not that many avenues I leave very open, but you could do that. There's other ways you could bribe me, though. Like, I'll listen. If you really hate this, you can say I want to go, and you can apply, and I can say, oh, I'll think about it. I might give you a pass, you know. If and I might charge a fee for that. Maybe it depends. If you found a popular internet company and you want to move to a different country, I might think about maybe taking all your wealth or a big chunk of it, just because why the hell not? I mean, it's mine anyway. You didn't build that. It's in my country. I mean, I fucking said I owned it. There's nobody here before. Nobody else had a hand in building it but me, pretty much. So I mean, and if I took it, it wouldn't be theft. It would be consensual. The fact that you're trying to get away, you still haven't gotten away yet. So it's consent. And it's not just the money, it's everything. And so, I hear a lot of people out there criticizing me for all kinds of little things. I mean, there's this small group of people who call me a criminal and they say I'm a mafia and whatever. And that's bullshit, because everything that I do is, boom, consensual. Everything that I do to people, those people agreed with it because they had choices they could have taken. Hypothetically and practically, in some cases, they could have done stuff that could have altered what happened to them. They could have escaped my clutches one way or another. So it's not a crime. But even more than that, there's a lot of people out there who aren't, these childish hypocrites who just want to live under the security I provide, but then bitch about how it's involuntary. That's a small group of people. But there's a lot of people out there who do bitch just about particular things. They say, oh, that was wrong, that person died, that person was treated wrong, that veteran got a bad surgery and he committed suicide, and that person got syphilis because you were doing experiments on them, and those people got thrown into a camp without due process, and that guy got his face shut off, and that group of people got burned up in an inferno because they were accused of making drugs that whatever people should be allowed to take, blah blah blah. People bitch about that kind of stuff all the time, and I don't see what the big deal is. All those actions were voluntary. None of the people, they all of them could have done things. They were free to pursue other alternatives, and the fact that they didn't, or even if they tried and they failed, indicates their consent. And again, would this work in a normal criminal court? Absolutely not. But the normal criminals, they don't have a piece of vellum signed 225 years ago that say that it's okay. And I do. And I think this is pretty obvious, people. I mean, it should be pretty easy to understand, you know? And we need to have somebody doing the things that I do. It's necessary. And it's not evil. It's good. It's good. George Washington said so.